Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Bob Balderson, and I am delighted to serve as your worship associate today and to welcome you fully into our beautiful space. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you are bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We welcome all of you. We extend a special welcome to each guest among us. Unfortunately, the Inquirer session for today will be canceled, but guests are invited to come early on another Sunday and drop in to the Inquirer session at 10 a.m. in the parlor to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and our church in a smaller, casual gathering. We invite our guests to fill out a welcome card, which is located in the pew rack in front of you, and drop it in the offering plate later in the service. You can also pick up a welcome packet at the back of the sanctuary. Hearing assist devices and Braille hymnals are available at the rear of the sanctuary, and a fragrance-free area is located at the right front of the sanctuary. Now, if you are a visiting family, including children or youth, please join the children's recessional after the time for all ages and head across the hall to the common room. There you will be greeted by someone who will orient you to religious education. Immediately following the service, everyone is cordially invited for coffee and conversation in the common room across the hall. Again, my name is Bob, and I will be located at the guest table. As a way to engage at First Church, I invite everyone to explore the announcements insert, which is located in your order of service, for the numerous opportunities available here at First Church. In particular, let me draw your attention to the following. Our forum speaker this morning is Derek Beyer, and he is the founder and president of the Democratic Socialists of America, Milwaukee chapter, and he will be speaking on progressive socialism, the return of the common good. Our spring journey to the membership class will be held April 10th through May 1st on Wednesday evenings. Explore UU theology, history, social justice, and your own spiritual journey, and become a new member of First Church. Register at the member services table during coffee hour or online. Please bring your pledges in by Tuesday, April 2nd to support this community and to help our financial committee finish our budget for next year. If you have yet to pledge, please do it in the coffee hour or online today. Adults are invited to join the religious education community at 12:30 p.m. for pizza and salad lunch, followed by a bee sensation, that's B-E-E, sensation, and viewing the pine cone swarm created by our children. The chronologically gifted group, TCG, will be meeting for its monthly potluck at 12:30 p.m. today in Max Otto Hall. Please bring a dish to share, and if you don't have a dish, come anyway. There's always plenty of food available. Unitarian Universalists under 40 doing activities. UUUFDA is taking brunch on the road in April. Join the UUUFDA at the UFTA. I see. Join the UFTA at the Sherman Phoenix at 12:30 p.m. on April 7th. Please find details on these and more events in the announcement insert. Finally, please silence any electronic devices for the remainder of the service. Once again, I welcome you to First Church and invite you to join me in the unison reading of our mission, which is printed in your order of service, and let's say it like we mean it. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. At this time, I invite Ryan Brooke to come forward and to light the chalice. Ryan?
Our opening words this morning are "Having Come This Far" by James Broughton. I've been through what my through was to be. I did what I could and couldn't. I was never sure how I would get there. I nourished an ardor for thresholds, for stepping stones, and for ladders. I discovered detour and ditch. I swam in the high tides of greed. I built sand castles to house my dreams. I survived the sunburns of love. No longer do I hunt for targets. I've climbed all the summits I need to, and I've eaten my share of lotus. Now I give praise and thanks for what could not be avoided, and for every foolhardy choice. I cherish my wounds and their cures, and the sweet enervations of bliss. My book is an open life. I wave goodbye to the absolutes and send my regards to infinity. I'd rather be blithe than correct. Until something transcendent turns up, I'll plash here in my poetry puddle and try to keep God amused. Will you please rise, embody your spirit, and join us in our opening hymn, number 211.
Good morning. The story I have for you today is Ruby's Baby Brother by Catherine White. Not my Ruby, though. Mom's coming home with Leon today. I'm nervous, and I wonder if he's here to stay. Babies are smelly, and they make too much noise. And Leon is bound to snatch all my toys. So I've just made my wand and a big starry hat, and I think I'll turn Leon into a bat. Then I'll open the window and out he will fly and sleep upside down in the oak tree nearby. Suddenly, Mom and Leon are here. It's strange and it's scary. I dare not go near. I secretly peek my head around the door. I wonder if Mom is the same as before. Is she holding a baby or is it an elf? He's bound to have magical powers himself. What if he says to me, "This is my house, so Ruby, I'm turning you into a mouse." I'll live in this mouse house deep under the stairs and sneak out for breadcrumbs from under the chairs. Then Dad kneels beside me. He says, "Come and see. He looks just like you. He's as sweet as can be." I hear a strange gurgle and a hiccupy noise. I don't want to see him. I hate little boys. This isn't my brother. He's come from the stars. He looks like a creature from Pluto or Mars. I'm making this rocket up here in my room, and I'll send Martian Leon right up to the moon. Now Leon is wailing. Trust him to cry. Mom says he's pooey. That's probably why. Dad's going to change him. A fun thing to do. But what about me? Look, I'm here too. Then Mom hugs me tight, and we sit on a chair. She's talking and laughing and braiding my hair. Dad gives me Leon, who opens his eyes. He clutches my finger. I laugh in surprise. His hand is so tiny. He's so warm and small. I wrap myself around him in one cuddly ball. I'm a busy big sister. There's so much to do. I find all my papers, my crayons, my glue. These are our swords, and for the battle we'll fight when we're riding on quests as a queen and a knight. This hat that I've made, he'll wear every day. When he's a captain, we'll sail on the bay. I'll battle fierce serpents that rise from the sea, and then rescue Leon with this golden key. And these are his wings when he's ready to fly. We'll both build a castle high up in the sky. And I'll use my spells and my magical power to tame fiery dragons that circle the tower. This spaceship will help us to zoom far away. Leon will steer, and I'll tell him the way. Whizzing faster than light, we'll shoot into space and wave at our house from some far distant place. But when it is night and the moon shining high, when witches and wizards and ghosts start to fly, when he's lying afraid of a creak on the stair, he won't have to worry. I will be there. We invite our children and teachers to join in singing verse 1 of the hymn and then proceed to class as the congregation continues. Please rise in body or spirit for Children's Recessional Hymn 348.
You may be seated. I'd like to invite you in for a time of contemplation, which will be followed by silence, followed by the seated singing of Spirit of Life. So just take a minute to feel your body where it is in the pew. Let your feet and your sit bones ground you. And the top of your head connect you to all that is. And let your breath moving in and out bring you into being here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. We each have our own hardest journey, our own highest mountain, and our own commitment to the climb. And each of us has our own team, the people around us who love us, the folks pulling for us, the folks who wrap the rope around their waist and haul us up again. And we have teammates we don't even know, too, those other humans who send their stories across time to us, whispering to us, "You can do it." And even though none of us will survive this life, we're all here now, facing the climb. May we each be tethered to our team by the cable blue fire ropes of love. And may we know it. May it be so. The reading today is a poem by Adrienne Rich called Fantasia for Elvira Shatayev. Shatayev was the leader of a women's climbing team, all of whom died in a storm on Lenin Peak in August of 1974. Later, Shatayev's husband found and buried the bodies. The cold felt cold until our blood grew colder. Then the wind died down and we slept. If in this sleep I speak, it's with a voice no longer personal. I want to say, with voices. When the wind tore our breath from us at last, we had no need of words. For months, for years, each one of us had felt her own yes growing in her, slowly forming as she stood at windows, waited for trains, mended her rucksack, combed her hair. What we were to learn was simply what we had up here, as all out of words, that yes gathered its forces, fused itself, and only just in time to meet a no of no degrees, that black hole sucking the world in. I feel you climbing toward me, your cleated boot soles leaving their geometric bite colossally embossed on microscopic crystals, as when I trailed you in the Caucasus. Now I am further ahead than either of us dreamed anyone would be. I have become the white snow, packed like asphalt by the wind, the women I love lightly flung against the mountain. That blue sky, our frozen eyes unribboned through the storm, we could have stitched the blueness together like a quilt. You come, I know this, with your love, your loss strapped to your body, your tape recorder camera, ice pick. You come against advisement to give us burial in the snow and in your own mind, while my body lies out here flashing like a prism into your eyes. How could you sleep? You climbed here for yourself. We climbed for ourselves. When you have buried us, told your story, ours does not end. We stream into the unfinished, the unbegun, the possible. Every cell's core of heat pulsed out of us and into the thin air of the universe. The armature of rock beneath these snows, this mountain which has taken the imprint of our minds through changes elemental and minute as those we underwent to bring each other here, choosing ourselves, each other, and this life, whose every breath and grasp and further foothold is somewhere still enacted and continuing. In the diary I wrote, now we are ready, and each of us knows it. I have never loved like this. I have never seen my own forces so taken up and shared and given back. After the long training, the early sieges, we are moving almost effortlessly now in our love. In the diary, as the wind began to tear at the tents over us, I wrote, we know now We have always been in danger, down in our separateness, and now up here together. But till now, we had not touched our strength. In the diary torn from my fingers, I had written, "What does love mean? What does it mean to survive? A cable of blue fire ropes our bodies burning together in the snow. We will not live to settle for less. We have dreamed of this all our lives." In May of 2015, I was at a ministers' conference in Boston a few weeks following a very painful experience in my own life. When I arrived in Boston, away from church and my responsibilities, I was suddenly overwhelmed with a flood of feelings that had just been waiting there for my attention. During the conference, we were invited to the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association's weekly chapel worship. I went into the chapel pretty guarded, feeling vulnerable and having a hard time keeping up the facade of a totally put together person. So, of course, the worship leader told a story that was meant just for me. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find the name of the person who was leading worship that week, so I repeat this story to you without knowing its original teller. But if you are out there, thank you. Your sermon changed my life. The preacher at the UUA that day told the story of another Unitarian Universalist who we'll call Sue. Sue was on a journey that many of us might recognize, that of facing difficult truths in her life, of climbing big mountains and overcoming obstacles, of doing that one giant thing that was most difficult and frightening. And in her process of moving through, she moved the mountain climbing from the metaphorical to the literal, and began training to climb Mount Everest, the mountain. Now, it takes about a year to train for an Everest climb, and that includes physical strength and aerobic capacity, stamina, lung health, and significant amount of mental endurance. Climbing Everest requires both leg strength and core and low back strength because you're carrying a heavy pack. It also requires lungs that are trained to breathe in air that gets thinner and thinner the higher that you go. It requires the mental and the emotional endurance to move through freezing and wheezing and exhaustion and fear and boredom. And it takes physical endurance and adaptation. The human body is generally not equipped to live above 26,000 feet. And base camp for Mount Everest begins at 17,000 feet above sea level. High altitudes cause physiological changes to the body, including alkalizing one's blood, increasing one's red blood cell production, and making one's kidneys release bicarbonate. A person's body literally changes as they ascend the mountain because it adapts to survive. The most common route up Mount Everest is by taking a plane from Nepal's Kathmandu to Lukla, which is a small town in northeastern Nepal, 9,000 feet above sea level, and then climbing from Lukla all the way up to base camp, which is 8,000 feet above Lukla. Now, Lukla is a cluster of colorful teal and orange-tiled roofs, cutely nestled into a rocky snow-capped mountain, and the Lukla airport is the most dangerous airport in the world. It's also the safest part of the journey up Mount Everest. Flying in between rocky mountain peaks, often in snowy, stormy weather, and landing in a tight, short runway is where your journey up Mount Everest begins. From Lukla, it takes 2 days of climbing and resting to reach Namche Bazaar, the Sherpa capital that's located 11,000 feet above sea level. Most people stop there for a day to rest and to let their body acclimate to the altitude. Namche Bazaar has about 400 homes built into the side of the mountain, teal edges up the blue journey. In Namche, our sermon journeyer, Sue, found a Sherpa who was working in the tourism industry to help her with her trek, and she hired him as a guide up the mountain. She was with a team of other trekkers who had also been training for the climb, people she did not know well, but shared her dedication to take this harrowing journey. And of course, as you climb a mountain for days and sometimes weeks, sleeping outside and risking your life and pushing your body to the limits, you get to know folks. From Namche Bazaar, it takes another 2 days to climb up 3,000 more feet to the next Sherpa village. And from there, it's another 2 days of climbing and resting, 4,000 feet further up to South Base Camp. So our UU friend Sue is slowly making her way up the mountain with her chosen team of trekkers, several Sherpas, and a few other journeyers who had been training for months to make their way up the same external mountain and surely very different internal mountains. On the way up, Sue started experiencing shortness of breath. While they were walking, she wasn't particularly worried about that. Climbing Mount Everest is hard, and the air is thin. But when she was still short of breath at rest, she became somewhat concerned. Their team decided to wait another night to see if her body would adjust, since it takes several days for a human body to adjust to that kind of altitude. But the next morning, Sue's shortness of breath was worse rather than better. Her chest had become tight and her breathing was rapid. And she and her team of travelers realized her body was in distress. Instead of having high-altitude sickness, it looked like Sue was developing what's called high-altitude pulmonary edema, which is a potentially fatal condition that less than 1% of people develop, seemingly at random. Now, there are 2 treatments for high-altitude pulmonary edema. One is immediate oxygen, and the other one is immediate lower latitude. Both required getting back down the mountain as quickly as possible. By this point, however, Sue could not walk. Her body was in so much distress that it was taking everything in her just to breathe. By the time they all understood what was happening and how quickly they needed to get her back down the mountain, Sue could not even stand. Her team moved into action. They scavenged through all of their climbing gear, and they made a stretcher for her out of it. And then one of the Sherpas and the strongest trekker agreed to team up and carry her on that makeshift stretcher back down the mountain. By this point, Sue was fighting to breathe, and one of her lungs was crackling. She needed medical assistance as soon as possible, but there was no way to get her to a hospital except through a helicopter airlift out of Namche Bazaar, which was several thousand feet back down the mountain. So for days, Sue lay on a makeshift stretcher, stretched between the hands of her 2 teammates, her life literally in the hands of 2 men she barely knew. She had chosen both of these men as teammates for her journey, and now they were choosing to save her life. She lay there on the stretcher, staring up into the clear blue air of the sky, mostly focused on her own belabored breathing and unable to move very much at all. They had wrapped her incredibly tightly to the stretcher so that she wouldn't fall out as they scrabbled down some of the hard path of the mountain. The Sherpa spoke very little English, but the other trekker spoke to her on their curving descent as she stared there up into the sky, hanging between life and death. On that unexpected journey back down the mountain, it was Sue's teammate's voice that tethered her to this world, acting as a rope between her and her body, weaving its way through exhaustion and fear and the thin air of the universe, connecting her to life. That tether was a cable blue fire rope connecting her to her body and her body to theirs in this sudden surprise struggle for her life. And even though she couldn't move or speak, even though she couldn't do anything except lie there and breathe, trusting her team, this man she barely knew kept talking to her, letting his voice wind its melodic story around her body the entire 2 days, carrying her back down the mountain to safety. Listening to that story back in the chapel in 2015, I saw that tether tossed out from teammates. I felt the cable blue rope of fire unwinding from this preacher's voice, unspooling through the pews to me, shaking where I was in my seat. And I saw that spool reach back to him and through him, behind him, back to Sue, back through her body that was tethered to the man speaking and to the Sherpa carrying, and even back before them to the teammates who once upon a time had saved their lives through story and song, through someone they knew who reached out and slowly, carefully reeled them back in, staring up at the blue sky in wonder at this life and its curious, tenuous connections pulling across that line between life and death. Sitting there in worship, the storyline of fire saved my life too, pulled me back from the brink and told me I was on a team even if I didn't know the preacher or the mountain climber or the Sherpa or the talking trekker or the people who came before them. I was on the team. I was roped in, connected through that thin blue cable rope of fire to the lives before mine, and held. I finally wept. We don't always have the luxury of choosing our journeys. Sometimes we have a plan for one journey, and instead, the real journey chooses us. And sometimes, quite frankly, those journeys that choose us stink. They are not what we want. They are certainly not what we have chosen, and they aren't even anything we would ever wish on someone else. And yet, there we are being carried down the mountain on a makeshift stretcher with a single melodic voice, storytelling tenuous tethers between our body and this world. Our lives in the hands of a team we don't control and might not even know. In Adrienne Rich's poem of the mountain climber Elvira Shatayev and her team, they died there on the side of the mountain, the bodies of the women she loved, so alive in their climb, lightly flung against the mountain, tied together by that same cable blue rope of fire. And yet, even in that, Rich finds celebration. She finds love there among the women on the mountainside who did not survive. What does it mean, she asks, to survive? We have been waiting for this journey, she says, waiting to live this fully, waiting to climb into ourselves and our own power together here on this mountain, waiting for it all of our lives. And now, in death, we stream together into the unfinished and the unbegun. Rich knows that death is part of the climb, that none of us will survive this life. And yet in the climb, in the journey, even and maybe especially the journeys that fail, there is deep and abiding love. There is passion for climbing, passion for the love of your team, gratitude at having one more day to suck the clear, cold, blue mountain air into your fighting to breathe, fighting for this life lungs. And sometimes your teammates walk you down the mountain, trailing your breath and tethering your life with their storied voice, roping you back to this earth. And sometimes your team walks you off the mountain and out of this life, the cold, growing colder until the wind dies down and you sleep. You can't always choose your journey, but you can live every breath fully while you still have it. You can climb the mountain. You can make a different one move, and you can know the whole journey, how much your team loves you, and trust them with your life, fire cabled to theirs. May it be so. From Fantasia for Elvira Shatayev by Adrienne Rich. I'll begin. In the diary I wrote, "Now we are ready."
And each of us knows it.
I have never loved like this. I have never seen my own forces so taken up and shared.
And given back.
After the long training, the early sieges,
We are moving almost effortlessly in our love.
in the diary, as the wind began to tear at the tents over us, I wrote, "We know now we have always been in danger."
Down in our separateness.
And now up here together, but till now,
We had not touched our strength.
in the diary torn from my fingers, I had written, "What does love mean?"
What does it mean to survive?
A cable of blue fire ropes our bodies burning together in the snow. We will not live to settle for less.
We have dreamed of this all our lives.
Will you join in singing our closing hymn, number 318, We Would Be One?